All right, everybody, let's get started. My name's Carol Muller, and I am the Regional Field Manager for Colorado for Action for Healthy Kids. And co-presenting on the webinar with me today is Ellen Dillon. She is the Regional Field Manager for our Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. And today we are going to be talking about school meals, challenges, and opportunity. And the webinar is brought to you by Action for Healthy Kids. Let's review some logistics before we get started. Once you are linked in, you should all see a control panel, usually on the right side of your screen. You can use your telephone or speakers to listen to the presentation, but everybody will be muted to avoid static and background interference. Note that there's a dialog box at the bottom of your control panel. See the red arrow on the screen that shows you where to locate that. You can type questions into the dialog box as we're going along, and we will try to get them answered at the end of the presentation. We have a question time. Or if we don't get to them, we can always answer them via email following the webinar. We are recording today's webinar, and we will send out links to that recording and to the handouts and resources that we mention. We'll send those out a few days after the webinar. Most likely it will be Tuesday after the holiday. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to give you just a little background on Action for Healthy Kids. We are a national nonprofit. We fight childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. We are made up of moms and dads and teachers, students, school community leaders, and lots of different school wellness experts who have all banded together to help our kids perform better in school and to create healthier learning environments for them, as well as help them learn healthy habits that they can use throughout the rest of their lives. We really believe that everyone has a part to play in ending our nation's childhood obesity epidemic, and we have lots and lots of great programs, tools, and resources that all can help to make that possible. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Thatcher, and today we have more than 70,000 members. We partner with hundreds of schools and districts across the country, and with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations, both at the national level and at the state and local level. So one thing that you can take a look at to learn more about who we are and what our mission is a great resource called the Learning Connection. We published this report in 2013, and it really helps to summarize the most recent research proving that healthy kids are better learners. And we recommend you take a look at that and download it from our website. It's not only great to learn about our mission, but it's a very good tool that you can share with others in your community to make the case for healthier schools. So today's presentation is part of the Action for Healthy Kids Parent Leadership Series. We really believe that parents play a crucial role in creating healthier school communities. We found that school communities which include strong parent advocates really can help create changes that are a lot more sustainable and permanent. And this series is designed to give you guys the tools and knowledge to make your efforts a success. On your screen, you see the different topics that are covered in the series, and we've divided them into 6 separate webinars, which we present live throughout the year, and we'll always have the latest ones archived for you to view later. And of course, today we're going to be talking about school meals, challenges, and opportunities. In a lot of cases, when parents and others want to get involved in helping their school become healthier, they think immediately of the school meals program. That is really, for some, the definition of what school wellness is all about. But school meals is a very challenging topic, even for those in the business. And so we're hoping that this webinar will really give you a better understanding of the complexities of the National School Meals Program. It's a federally funded program, and we want to go over some of the limitations and constraints placed on food service directors at the district and school building level so that you know best how to have an impact when you talk to them. We also want to give you a better understanding of how recent legislation influences school meals, and in particular how it can help you be a better partner to the food service staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen, and she's going to go into some of that information for us.
Great. Thank you, Carol. So as you can see here, and as Carol has highlighted, we're going to be going through what giving you more information on the National School Meal Program, which includes National School Lunch, as well as National School Breakfast. The legislation that Carol mentioned is the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which has gone through various reauthorizations, just most recently in 2013, and will go up again in 2015. We'll talk about the new meal pattern regulations, common food service concerns, as well as what you can do as a parent, and some ideas and strategies for creating change. And as Carol mentioned, we will have an opportunity for Q&A. So please make sure if you are submitting your questions, you get those in the question box. Periodically, we may pause to answer them, but we will definitely be pausing at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. If I do see that one hand is raised, Senia K, if you have a question, go ahead and submit it. Or if you no longer have a question or you were able to figure out what you needed, you can unraise your hand and just click on that button again. If you have a question, just go ahead and submit that for us so we can make sure we're answering you. All right, so let's get ourselves started. So the National School Lunch Program and National School Breakfast programs are federally funded and subsidized programs. And so the goal of the program is really to help feed kids in need, as well as feeding kids just on a daily basis. The National School Lunch Program, and SLP, serves almost 30 million children daily, with nearly 20 million of them are eligible for free and reduced meals based upon family incomes. And so that there's a general guideline as well as an application that's needed to complete to determine that. But we're seeing that we're able to feed not only those in need, but also those in the just general school buildings or eating school lunch. The school breakfast is a little bit less utilized program. It's in almost 90% of all of the schools in the country, and they are serving about 12.5 million children daily, with nearly almost 11 million of them being free and reduced. So mostly it seems as if free and reduced children are participating, but you'll see that there's definitely a lag between the breakfast and the lunch participation. And the way schools work is they receive subsidies as well as USDA food to help supplement the cost of these programs. And the biggest key is that schools must meet federal nutrition requirements when providing these school meals. So when schools participate in these federally funded programs, then they must meet certain requirements. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So schools must follow the federal requirements and federal meal patterns. But what they decide to provide in terms of the food and how they serve it and how to prepare them is really left up to the local school food authorities, which is the school district. It could be the school as an individual entity, as well as perhaps vendors that they're working closely with. So these decision makers, they are including the nutrition or food services director. It can be at the district level or at the individual school level, which could be the area or cafeteria manager. And it really depends on how your school in your district, in your state, operates. They can all look differently in every state. Some districts have dietitians or nutritionists, as well as chefs on staff, or those that are in a consulting role to help with the meal planning. But legislation varies by state to state as to any other additional requirements placed on the schools regarding their federal programming, or regarding their breakfast programming, excuse me. So in addition, as I mentioned, those students who qualify for free meals or reduced price meals have to fill out a certain application, and then that's determined here, and you can kind of see what it's based on in terms of the cost involved. And in terms of cost for those that are full-paying students, it's really determined by the school level, and it's really pretty much a an economical program for families. Often, price for breakfast is usually under $2, sometimes $1.50, $2, as well as for lunch. In fact, I've seen recently, up to maybe about $3 in some high schools. But when we start to talk about the lunch program, you'll start to see that it's really a very complicated process. And I'm not going to even go through this slide because it is so complicated. But if you just look at all the different entities, the different organizations involved, whether they be at the federal level, the state level, and then down to the school level. So there's lots of different people involved, lots of different rules and regulations. So you start to see that it's kind of a complicated process. And this example is from a school in Colorado. So, we're able to see this is going on in Colorado. It's probably pretty similar to things going on in your state. So what are some of the challenges? Well, we know that the purpose of the school breakfast or the school lunch program is to feed children. That was why it was formed. It was formed so that we could make sure that children are getting fed, as well as providing an opportunity for our agriculture, our farmers to provide for surplus food items. So it's really also a way to make sure that we're providing opportunities and jobs for those in our local community. In addition, what we do know is that about 15 to 20% of the food on the school lunch menu is coming from these food programs, and they include usually meats, poultry, eggs, different types of grains, and things like that. So in terms of reimbursement, so we talked about the fact that schools receive subsidies or reimbursements from the federal government through the USDA, and this is just an example of the amount of money that schools can receive based on each meal. This is based on lunch, which is at a higher rate than, say, breakfast, but you'll start to see, well, that if a school meal costs a paid student around $3, they're getting up to about the same amount of money for their free students, as well as a reimbursement for their reduced students, and they do still get a reimbursement rate for even those paid students. So depending upon the need of the school, meaning how many students are in that free and reduced category, there's also an additional amount of money that is provided to the schools based upon the overall need. So those that qualify for a more severe need get a couple of cents more too. So the costs go to paying for, obviously, their overhead costs and labor, and that's usually a big part of the budget, as well as then about $1 per meal is spent on food. So really it's being creative with the amount of money they have to be able to provide the wholesome meals that we're really trying to provide through the school lunch program. So the biggest issues regarding this is that there's all kinds of things that are competitive or competing with the National School Lunch Program. And they can include the fact that there's freedom of choice, and when students are able to leave a building, maybe at the high school level, they're going out for maybe convenience foods or bringing in not as healthy foods to the school and eating that. The cost of labor is rising, whether it be through the cost of health care or the general cost of labor in general, and there's a shortage of trained labor. So that ends up creating schools that really aren't equipped for the cooking from scratch. A lot of the buildings are not situated like they used to be, where there was a central kitchen in the school. Some districts have central kitchens and others don't, and either vend in most of their foods or are not able to prepare from a scratch situation. So it's being able to know what you have to deal with helps to be able to communicate to the national, to your school food service director or your lunchroom manager, because if you understand that they can't cook from scratch at that school, then you can go from there. But if it is a cook from scratch school, then you can talk a little bit differently about menu choices and menu selection. So earlier we were talking about that the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010 was established. And at that point, that was the first time in about, and I'm going to just put out a number because I'd have to double check that, about 30 years that this has changed in terms of the recommendations of our school meals programs in terms of what is provided and how it's provided. So really, this is an important legislation. It was key to being able to make sure students are eating healthier food options. And what it did is it provides additional guidelines on the amounts of food that are provided, the calorie counts, as well as provides for additional funding to support schools in making these changes. By next year, most of these schools are going to be in full compliance. So it was a rollout phase, and it provided opportunity for schools to really get their programming in place. So first they had to start adding in fruits and vegetables to the lunch menu. Then they went into more whole grains, increasing the opportunity for dairy provided to students, low-fat dairy rather than high or whole milk dairy. So lots of opportunities to increase the quality of the foods that are being provided to the students. Let's see. So here we can see that it also helps to establish additional connections with our local farm-to-school programs and establish opportunities for school gardens. It is also in the process of creating strengthening of the school wellness policy. So that is in the draft stage, and it should be more formalized by we don't have a full date. It's just right now in opportunity to share opinions has just closed. So right now they're kind of forming all the different feedback from their proposed rulings on local school wellness policies. But really anything that's providing additional support and guidance from the legislation and from the federal government is really key because it's forcing our schools to make sure they're following certain guidelines. In addition, it requires that water is to be available to all students in school, and especially during meal service, and free of charge. So whether it be water stations or water fountains or some other type of water source, these are now requirements to meet the goals of this program. The new meal pattern is also based on what we know in terms of good nutrition around the new meal patterns, around the MyPlate. So with MyPlate, we're making sure that schools are providing additional fruits and vegetables, whole grains, as well as low-fat milks and low-fat dairy, as well as protein. So by using these items and using the MyPlate, we know that it's basing the new meal patterns on good nutrition facts and knowledge, and not just on maybe what's available or any other type of ideas regarding what they should be doing. So they took a lot of study as to what's going into the meals and making sure that their calorie content as well as portion sizes are based on the students' age ranges, and so it's really going to be a very helpful tool not only in feeding children, feeding hungry children in some instances, but also in terms of obesity rates among children, is to really help to reduce saturated fat, trans fats, as well as reducing sodium and making the meals overall more healthy. So we can go to, there's a couple different resources that we'll be providing to you in the webinar materials, and it's around from the USDA, Food and Nutrition Services Department, and you can find them where you can kind of get an example of what a meal would look like prior to the changes and then after these changes. And here's an example here, and we can start to see that these meals are really becoming much more healthy and much more full of different ingredients. And we know it's happening in schools across the country Sometimes it's lower in other locations, and maybe in your district you've got a really progressive food service director who's already serving these items, and others that might need to kind of make some of those switches over. But we know that it's now, because it's a requirement, all school districts will be having to meet these requirements. In addition to the meal changes, in terms of, for example, National School Lunch Program, there's now new legislation around the Smart Snacks in School program. So that's really going to be changing what schools are serving in the kind of like that a la carte line, and what else they might be providing to students in vending machines. So really, that's another opportunity to get rid of the higher fat, higher sugar items, and really increase and provide more opportunity for children to make healthier choices in their school day. So what is it it's all kind of coming down to? So the food service department has concerns. The biggest issue is around participation. And so if students are participating, then they are getting more money through their USDA reimbursements. They're feeding more kids. Schools are happier because kids are behaving better in schools because they're not hungry and they're not visiting the nurse. So by increasing participation, we're really able to target so many other things going on the school level. Unfortunately, participation isn't as strong as we'd like it to be. Just because we build it doesn't mean they're going to come. We really have to make sure that we're able to meet their needs, provided in an environment that's conducive to students and is appealing to them as well. So, there's lots of things that come into play when food service is talking about increasing participation and getting more kids to eat school breakfast. Some other concerns besides participation is just really making sure that the food service is providing food that kids will like, because no one wants to have a healthy trash can. Really, it's about making sure that those kids are eating healthy meals. So reducing and eliminating waste can also be of concern to food service, and so providing foods that they'll like in an attractive manner is important. Figuring out waste strategies that will reduce what's going into landfills and what's being picked up by the local trash. So, being creative is another strategy that food service has to deal with in terms of avoiding the tossing out of foods. So we'll talk a little bit about ways that you as a parent can help support food service in providing additional exposure to students to try new foods a little bit. And we talked more about that a la carte and competitive foods. So not only there are times that food service are benefiting from the selling of foods in the a la carte lines. And because they do that, they really need to make sure they're pricing those items at a level where students are less likely to want to participate and eat the unhealthy foods compared to the healthy foods, which should be priced at a cheaper price point. But also that there are other things competing outside of the school. So, schools have ended up creating guidelines as to when, the vending machines might be open, when the school store is selling food, or what items are on sale at the a la carte lines, and making sure that those items are priced to a point where, like I was saying, that they're not creating competition among those healthy food items of the meal program. And those new guidelines regarding the Smart Snacks, and that's a tongue twister, is really going to help create additional guidelines around that as well. So what can people do about this? Because when we start to think about it, it sounds really, really big. But it doesn't have to be, because it's really about starting where you are with your school, and in terms of what the biggest issues that you might be facing those within your school. So we've talked about the different challenges facing the school meal program. We've talked about the complexity of the food that's being provided by USDA, how the meal costs and reimbursements take place, federal nutrition standards. So we know that food service directors are facing high expectations from parents and the community and a really tough and narrow food preferences of so many children. So in order to do that, we need to really be able to provide some opportunities to help parents figure out how to navigate among the food service world as well as the school world when it comes to school meals. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Carol, and Carol's going to share with us some examples of things that parents can do. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other strategies regarding school meals and parents and the school breakfast program. Carol?
Thanks, Ellen. So I just want to add, too, that we all know that compliance with all the new regulation comes in lots of different forms, and realistically it's going to look different from district to district and even school to school within each district as to whether the school is really making, is becoming a model for other schools or whether they are just meeting the minimum requirements. And so as a parent, when you go about trying to communicate with your food service staff and your cafeteria managers, it's really important that you go about it in a way that's collaborative, friendly, and you'll get a lot more traction that way. And the goal being, probably in your case, is to move your school from being one that might be making, meeting requirements minimally to, really getting your entire school community behind the spirit and in practice of being the best food service and offering the best meals possible to your school community. And that just, even that with, every school community has different resources, and so you have to understand what is going on in your particular community. So your first steps, as you can see on the screen, establishing a friendly relationship with the school food personnel. Basically, introduce yourself, explain what you're interested in doing. You're interested in learning more about how it works at your school. You want to be careful not to go in with the attitude that the school food is horrible. It needs to change. That's going to turn off your food service staff and make them unlikely to want to work with you. Instead, recognize that they're probably doing their job in the best way they can with the resources they have. And that may be financial resources, it may be knowledge, as well as support within the district. Familiarize yourself with the nutrition standards and guidelines that your district is required to follow, not just at the federal level, but at any state level or local district level, that regulations you might have at those other levels as well. You want to find out, how do school meals fit into the overall wellness culture of the district? Are there changes happening in other areas of the school food environment? If food service managers think that changes aren't being made in other areas of the school environment, for example, PTA or PTO events, fundraisers, and that type of thing, they may feel, and I have heard this often, that the burden of creating healthier schools is unfairly on their shoulders. So it's a good idea to come in with other things that are going on in other areas so that they don't think that it's all on them. You can use your district wellness policy as a platform to recommend changes in the cafeteria and school-wide. Research those common food service concerns that Ellen mentioned and respect them. Ask food service staff about the concerns and challenges that they face, in particular in your own district, and listen carefully. And it's only after you feel like you have a good understanding of that situation and that you've made it clear to food service staff that you have done your research. Only after that do you want to start making suggestions for changes. And then you want to make it clear that you're looking to be a partner with them. You just don't want to make them the enemy. We can't really emphasize that enough. So let's talk a little bit more about participation. As Ellen said, this is the #1 concern and challenge for food services. So how can you address participation rates? Because realistically, you're going to have ideas for that before you start to talk about how you're going to change school meals or how they should be changed. So at a minimum, your wellness team should be focusing on keeping participation rates stable. We'd like to think that they increase when healthier meals are being served, but in reality, sometimes that can either take time, and sometimes, in fact, they go in the opposite direction when some of kids' favorite things are removed or changed. So marketing is something to think about. Just like anything else, a good marketing campaign can really make a big impact on sales. And posters, notes and newsletters, emails, flyers. You can offer information or samples at school events like Back to School Night. You want to take any opportunity you can to let your school community, with the students, parents, and teachers, become familiar with the food, especially when you're introducing these newer, healthier items that are going on the menu. And even if the meals don't meet all of your personal standards, understand that change takes time, and recognize that taking small steps are better than none. If you can help get participation rates up, then food service staff is going to have more money to work with, and it's going to make it easier to even implement more healthy improvements down the line. Plus, it's going to go a long way towards developing a positive relationship with food service staff, and then they're going to listen to you more. Taste tests are a very good way to market new items. Kids, they need to try the new healthy foods. They may be hesitant about selecting anything new without trying it first. And when you provide samples and tasting opportunities, it's a kind of a fun and popular way to accomplish that. I know I found that oftentimes when I try to get my kids to try something new, it doesn't always happen because it's coming from mom. But when it happens in their school setting and they see other kids trying things, they're more likely to do the same. Try asking teachers and administrators and parents to eat school meals with the kids. If students see adults enjoying the food, they're more likely to view it as desirable. Consider bringing in a local celebrity to make a plug for healthy eating in general, and if possible, school meals in particular. Local athletes or reporters or politicians are all people you can consider. Try conducting a focus group with kids. Ask them what they do and don't like about school meals and what types of foods they'd like to see offered. Some schools are forming student clubs that are devoted to promoting healthier eating and improving school food. Really think about student buy-in. It's really essential to your success. And how about that cafeteria environment? You can work on visual appeal. The cafeteria needs to be a nice place to be. It needs to draw your students in. A new coat of paint, attractive posters, or even improving the lighting can make a difference and is a great way to get parents and the community involved. How about helping with service? Some students may choose not to order school meals because it takes too long to get through the line. And then they don't have enough time to eat. So ask if parent volunteers can help speed things along or brainstorm other ways to address this issue. How about educating parents? A 2009 study found that food service staff members cite lack of nutrition education for parents as one of the greatest barriers to improving healthy food choices. If families don't reinforce healthy eating at home, it's unlikely that school meal improvements will be as sustainable in the long run. So you can send easy-to-understand, approachable nutrition information home to parents. You can look into the possibility of bringing a cooking program or some other kind of nutrition education to the families in your school. Cooking Matters is one example of this. It teaches participants how to select and prepare nutritious and low-cost foods, and it operates in many places across the country. You can also check with your local university or agricultural cooperative extension service, or even local hospitals or other healthcare providers to see what types of nutrition education they offer for parents and families. Often they're looking for opportunities to get out into the community and offer this type of service. And then be sure to take some time to evaluate your efforts. If your efforts to improve your school food and increase participation aren't working, ask questions. Is the food appealing? Is it palatable to the kids? How about whether it's culturally appropriate for your particular student population? And if it isn't, if the answers are no, what else can you do to make it so? It's important to remember that kids sometimes take time to change their taste preferences. And, sometimes you need to give things a shot for a little longer time than you would like. And this can go back to the nutrition education, to marketing, taste tests, and focus groups, and bringing those types of programs in. So Schools definitely want parents to take an active role in making healthier school meals a reality and a success. And the USDA has a toolkit called The School Day Just Got Healthier. And if you encourage parents at your school to follow some of the tips from that toolkit, that can really help make a difference as well. Encourage them to join their kids for lunch in the cafeteria. Encourage them to review the school menu with their kids and to try the healthier foods that are being offered. After school, parents can ask their kids what was served and what they had for lunch. It's important to show your kids that you enjoy fruits, vegetables, and whole grains at meals that you have at home, and show them that you're willing to try new foods so that they'll be more likely to do the same during the lunch day. Discuss where vegetables, fruits, grains, and the different food types come from. Use grocery shopping as an opportunity to teach them about food and nutrition. And then take some of those foods that are offered in the cafeteria and try making them up at home. That'll go a long way as well towards getting your kids to buy in. Check out the link at the bottom of the screen. Check out the USDA toolkit. It really does have, it's got a lot more ideas as well. And then what else can you do? Once you've established your relationship with food services and learned about your school system related to meals and your policies and thought about participation and maybe done a few things in that area, there are other things to consider. There's other things that you as an individual parent or as a parent group can do to support healthier meals. We'd like to talk about a few things, programs that you can either initiate or that you can promote to nutrition services and your larger school community to initiate. Now, one of those is implementing your school wellness policy. Every school district is required to have one. You want to make sure that yours is up to date and being used rather than just possibly collecting dust on a shelf. Use that policy as a platform to make changes that are going to support and complement a healthy school meal program, both in the cafeteria and school-wide. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where your school food service manager doesn't want to have the entire burden of creating healthier schools on his or her shoulders. So if you are working on these types of things, then you are showing that you support healthy meals school-wide and not just in the cafeteria. If your school doesn't already have a school wellness committee or a school health advisory council, that's a great idea to start to look at those things school-wide. And we do recommend you take a look at some of the award or recognition programs that are out there. In particular, the Healthier U.S. School Challenge is a voluntary certification program which was established in 2004 to recognize schools in the National School Meal Program that have created healthier school environments through promotion of nutrition and physical activity, not just in the cafeteria, but also in the rest of the school. In 2010, First Lady Michelle Obama introduced Let's Move, which incorporated the Healthier U.S. School Challenge into her campaign to raise a healthier generation of kids. And at that time, monetary incentive awards were made available for each Healthier U.S. School Challenge award level. There's bronze, silver, gold, and then there's even a gold award of distinction. And in addition to possibly getting one of those monetary awards, many schools are finding that applying for the challenge is just a valuable learning process that can really put their school on track and their wellness team on track to focus on the areas that need improvement. And the certification process for school meals and competitive foods is pretty technical, but parents can definitely get involved by supporting and promoting the initiative and by helping to address those areas that are related to nutrition education and health promotion and physical activity and the overall school food culture. So another thing that parents and parent groups and school health teams can work on is to check out the Cornell Center for Behavioral Economics Smarter Lunchroom Initiative, which gives some great ideas on how small changes to your lunchroom can really increase sales of those healthier items, sometimes by more than 100%. So parents can help spread the word about this initiative and definitely help with implementation as well with the support of your school food service staff. And just a few of those changes that can make a big impact, just kind of some of these are really common sense, but we don't always think about them. So for a la carte sales, making healthy foods more visible and more convenient than the less healthy items. And this is just simply displaying them more visibly at eye level, putting them first in line or under a spotlight will help them to be chosen more often. When you put the healthier foods in these prime locations and then you relocate the unhealthier foods to more inconvenient spots, put your salad bar, if you have one, in a central location that every student will pass by, and add signs, add colorful containers. Some schools have even added linens to attract attention to the healthy choices. And Ellen already mentioned this, but you definitely want to make sure your foods are prepared or presented in an appealing way with these like brightly colored trays or different types of serving dishes. Using cool or appealing labels to describe foods can also help. One school changed the labels on their carrots to read X-ray vision carrots, and when they did so, their consumption of carrots doubled. They also relabeled their bean burrito as the Big Bad Bean Burrito and increased burrito consumption by more than 40%. So you can also utilize suggestive selling. You know, the cafeteria staff and other adults, they can definitely affect student choices. They can project that healthy foods are cool and, you know, use prompts. Would you like a salad with that pizza? Or where's your vegetable on that tray? Or, you know, use posters of athletes or other celebrity role models that promote healthy foods. So a few more ideas. The Department of Defense has a fresh fruit and vegetable program, which is known as DoD Fresh. And this program is part of the USDA's effort to provide schools with a wider variety of fresh produce. It's not available in all areas, but it's definitely worth checking out in your community. Salad bars. If your school, see if your school can add a salad bar if it doesn't already have one. It may qualify for a salad bar grant through one of the Let's Move initiatives. And you need to keep in mind, though, it's not always very simple. There are other challenges that come with adding a salad bar, factors to consider like staffing and logistics, space and waste, and making sure that the meals are reimbursable. Those can be all a little bit more complex even than normal when you're adding a salad bar in. Farm to School is another great program that connects schools with local farms. The objectives are, of course, to serve healthier meals, but also to provide agricultural health and nutrition education opportunities, and of course, to support your local and regional farmers. You can check out that resource to see if there's a program in your area or get one started. Garden to Cafeteria. If your school has a garden, look into the possibility of incorporating your garden produce into school meals. Students really do like knowing that the carrots and the lettuce and the tomatoes and anything that they help to grow is being served in the cafeteria as a part of lunch. That can really get them trying new things when they know that they grew it themselves. You want to be sure when implementing any of these things, and particularly garden to cafeteria or farm to school, that you are researching any state or local health requirements that may be in place before implementing those. And scratch cooking. Scratch cooking is always a great idea. It definitely can require a fair amount of resources and an amount of time, but there are more and more schools and districts and states that are implementing scratch cooking programs. So, and I know in Colorado, at least where we are, there are some great opportunities and funding sources in our state, and so there may be some in your state as well. So check those out and see if you can take advantage of some local resources to get more scratch cooking in your school. Let's move on to lunch period timing. This is a really important area. Look into the possibility of increasing the amount of time students have to eat. Experts recommend that students be allowed 20 minutes to eat after they arrive at the table with their food. It does not count the time that they spend in the lunch line. So you can start by checking to see if your district has any minimum requirements in this area. And realize, though, that if you are going to work on this, that administrators can be pretty resistant to this idea just because of the many things they have to schedule into the school day and also because of limited facility space. If you do choose to take this on, you want to do it in a very positive, understanding way and just keep in mind that there are many factors involved in making the school schedule. There's a nice, great quote on the screen from Helen Phillips of the School Nutrition Association, making it clear that foods are more likely to be eaten if kids have more time for lunch, and that means healthier foods. It takes longer to chew a whole apple than applesauce, she says. Another thing that you can take a look at is recess before lunch. This is also called, in some areas, recess reversal. And kids tend to eat a better lunch if they've already had their time on the playground. It leads to less waste, leads to better behavior and performance. And lots of schools are doing this very successfully. Basically, in many schools and for a long time, kids go into lunch and then afterwards they have their recess. And if we reverse this and kids get their time on the playground first, then they are often more willing to sit and eat a better lunch. Some schools do resist this because, once again, they have to change their schedules, and there can be challenges associated with that. But there are more and more schools that really think that it is providing enough of a benefit to make those scheduling logistics worthwhile. Look into a school wellness program framework. Action for Healthy Kids has Game On, the Ultimate Wellness Challenge. Another one that we recommend and that lots of schools are using successfully is Fuel Up to Play 60, which was created by our partners at the NFL and the National Dairy Council. These programs really do engage and involve kids in creating healthier schools. And if you want to implement nutrition and physical activity initiatives, putting them all together under one umbrella program like this, where you can also incorporate taste tests to try to increase participation in the lunchroom, it can give your whole entire wellness program a lot more power and really go a lot further when you're trying to get kids to eat better, both in the lunchroom and beyond. Game On, for example, has a list of Eat Better and Move More challenges, which are categorized by their intensity levels. You can pick the challenges that fit with the time and resources you have available in your individual school without having to invent anything new. But if you want to create your own challenges, you can. So the beauty of these programs is that they can be customized and tailored to your own individual school resources and volunteers that you have on board. I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen now, and she's going to talk a little bit more about school breakfast.
Great, Carol. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing all those great ideas for parents and things that are easier to do and some that are bigger to do. One of the things that we wanted to talk about, too, we talked about the lunch program and how to do taste tests to increase participation in lunch. The biggest need with breakfast programming is a little bit different because when we start talking about school breakfast, you get to wondering, well, why don't kids eat a school breakfast? Well, the reason they don't eat school breakfast is usually because of timing and having to go to the cafeteria. With school lunch, all students are going to the cafeteria, whether they're bringing their lunch or they're buying their lunch. They all enter the cafeteria for lunchtime. For school breakfast, there's often not that period of time before school where all students attend to the cafeteria. Most cafeterias aren't built to support the entire student body anyway, so that's why they have usually multiple lunch shifts in a given school. But for school breakfast, the biggest thing is that it requires children to enter the cafeteria to get their breakfast. So one of the strategies that can be done to increase breakfast participation is by changing that model, offering what is called an alternative breakfast program. And it could be a breakfast in the classroom program or a grab-and-go breakfast. It could be a breakfast that's on the bus. We see that happening in states where children are sitting on the bus for really long periods of time. In those instances, the bus driver brings the breakfast with him or her, and the kids eat it on their way into the school. So it's really kind of creative like that. And or maybe that, especially at the high school level, which if any of us have a high schooler, you know that they don't always want to eat first thing in the morning. And because school is opening so early, it's not the best time for them, and they're more hungry after that first period. If you're a school nurse or talk to a school nurse, you better believe around 10 o'clock in the morning is when it's probably the busiest time of the day if school started, say, before 8, because that's when kids are starting to get hungry, especially if they didn't eat breakfast. So if you can work with a food service director to suggest an alternative breakfast program, here's examples and then of ways to do that. It's a bigger undertaking, but it yields huge impact. In our the Learning Connection report that Carol was mentioning earlier, there's data that shows that children that are eating school breakfast, not just breakfast in general, but a school breakfast, are doing better on their academics. There's less discipline issues. There's better attendance at the school. There's less incidence of tardy. There's less incidence of visiting the nurse for tummy aches and headaches. So by just getting more kids to eat school breakfast, you can combat so many other learning outcomes and things going on at school. Action for Healthy Kids has a number of resources available. We have a section on our website that's dedicated to breakfast resources. You can find webinars that focus on school breakfast, tip sheets for school parents as well as school administrators and food service departments, as well as how to find breakfast grants. Which leads us to a quick example. There are funding avenues available. We have at Action for Healthy Kids 2 different grants, one that would implement an alternative model and one that would implement an alternative model along with what we call as universal breakfast, which is where breakfast is free for all students. And in those cases, there's different funding streams and funding amounts, but what it will do is help to provide equipment as well as some other incentive items and activities that will help the kids be able to increase participation in those breakfast programs, maybe offer some taste testing of some healthy breakfast items, and really provides an opportunity to make that another avenue for schools to be able to not only feed hungry kids, but make sure that kids are learning better, too, in their schools. So it's really a great opportunity. And one of the ways that parents could get involved is either by taking the lead on being, maybe the grant writer or helping lead a school to a grant. It's really great when parents come in with ideas, but sometimes those ideas aren't really possible without some funds. And then if you're able to show, well, hey, I've got some funds for you too, you really become a much more powerful advocate, as Carol was saying earlier. So we wanted to talk a little bit about a success story that occurred in Eagle County, Colorado. Carol may jump in here on occasion as I talk about this because she's more familiar with this story. But this was a breakfast. This was a program that was impacted by a parent that focused on a cooking from scratch program. And so this is something that can be done on, from a parent. It's not too big. It really just depends on, the ability to connect with your local food service director as well as those in the community that can provide you resources and support. By just changing this way they were serving their school lunches, they increased their lunch participation by 25%. And they really planned, the district plans to make this something that's an ongoing and available to more schools within their district. So just by one parent and one group of parents making a change at one school level, they're really able to have a greater impact across the board and across the district's other schools. So really it was just a matter of working with the school district's director of nutrition service. They were able to pilot this program. The students were able to enjoy homemade meals, which was made, with the stealth cooking technique, like putting butternut squash in macaroni and cheese. And they provided a daily salad bar. And with that, all of those things, that participation increased. So, it's
and I
really
would just add They spent, I know they've also put a lot of effort into fundraising as a parent group just to help make the program sustainable. They've, the parent group went out and got several grants. They hosted a series of chef dinners at high-end local restaurants. And it really are a great example of what parents banding together can do to make improvements. So,
great. Thanks, Carol. So it's just one example. I know there's many more. We don't, we try to gather as many parent success stories as we can. So if you have a story that you'd like to share, you can certainly share it with us at Action for Healthy Kids, and we'll be able to provide your story as well. And so consider that if something's working for you. We have lots of strategies that you can take and use on our website. So please think about also sharing those successes with us. What we do know is that there are challenges. There's ways that parents can get involved. And we also have from Dale Hayes, who's a huge supporter of school meals. And she has a website called School Meals That Rock, which really is a great tool that is being used by food service departments, parents all over the country, and it's really about making food fun and exciting, and that school meals can be that fun and exciting opportunity. So parents have a way of connecting and being able to really provide some additional solutions to these schools, and as a supporter and a resource for the schools and vice versa. So like Carol was saying, becoming those partners rather than, putting others on the defensive is really the better strategy. And, if you go on, for example, Dale's website, the things that you'll see going on in schools across the country in terms of food service and, making the food look appealing and fun, it's just really, really exciting. So we would encourage you to take a look at that as well. So you can also share the healthy food and activity at school. So on our website, we have additional resources that focus on how members of the community are working together to provide consistent messages. And so that's really important. That consistent messaging around nutrition and physical activity is important. And by providing additional opportunity for others to come together. So, like Carol was talking about the PTA being involved or others within your school, be careful that you don't have the pizza party and the ice cream party when kids do something really well, and make it more maybe a physical activity party or a fruits and vegetables party, because you might find that those interfering messages can cause some problems. So there's lots of resources on our website that we'll encourage you to take a look at regarding how to share healthy food and activity at school. At this point, Carol, do you want to share any questions that we might have?
Sure. And let me just also say about that Share Healthy Food and Activity slideshow that we have that you can download. We've also recorded it and put it on YouTube, so if you are interested in sharing the message but don't actually want to give the presentation yourself, you can just pull it up on YouTube. And it's about 10, 12 minutes long and really goes into all the different areas that can be addressed to help improve nutrition and physical activity, all the best practices, and talks about how some common daily practices in school can be giving conflicting messages. So with that, we have a couple of questions. First up, what are your thoughts on what Congress is considering now that we'll do away with this progress? And I think that's talking about very recent press release that was put out concerning maybe some postponements on some of the requirements. Ellen, can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. These are really recent, and I don't want to misspeak on what is occurring, but I believe what is really within the last week, I think. There's been some pushback that some school districts are finding that they're having challenges meeting some of the requirements that are in place with the new guidelines. And so what is being considered is not so much a rollback or anything like that, but just a little bit more of a delay, or providing opportunities for schools to figure out ways to meet some of the requirements. For example, the new breakfast requirement for the 2014-15 school year is to require a full cup of fruit at every breakfast. And that does pose it's a greater expense. It's a logistical issue, like how to make sure they're providing that. It's a cost expense because more fruit is going to cost more money, and it's not just fruit juices. So it's really trying to find other ways to provide whole fruits and real fruits, and not just a fruit juice. So it does pose some problems. I think in any change that takes place, there are sometimes little bumps in the road. A while back, there was a bump in the road regarding school lunches being kids not, especially at the high school level, not feeling they were getting enough food, and they were feeling like they didn't want to eat the school meal because the portion sizes had changed. So they're saying that especially those that are doing after school activities were feeling hungry. So it's change has bumps in the road, but I think overall a lot of these changes aren't going to take place without support from across the board, parents as well as schools, and as well as organizations such as Action for Healthy Kids and others that are concerned about the health and well-being of children, and seeing the benefit, and that while those bumps might take place, they really are there for the good and the benefit of the kids. And sometimes, it's a matter of timing and being able to roll out with enough opportunity to make schools be healthier places, and strategies for helping them do that. So I think it's going to be okay. In 2015, as I mentioned earlier, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act is being reauthorized for 2015. So what that means is there's going to be a lot more recognizing some of these challenges, looking at where we are, where do we want to go, maybe changing some meal recommendations, maybe finding some additional strategies that will support healthy schools. And so being able to relook at it again is important. It's not just something that's going to be in place for 30 years like it was over the last 30 years. But I think that's exciting too, and I think that shows a lot of progress. Carol, did you have any thoughts on that one that you wanted to jump in with?
No, I think that you covered it pretty well. It just goes back to that it's always this delicate balancing act between the ideal and the reality of how fast districts and schools can move, and there's not always agreement on that, and there's just a wide variety of levels of experience and resources from district to district and school to school, and sometimes if it has to go a little bit more slowly to get the buy-in and not just buy-in, but support and really getting behind it in spirit from the people who are implementing it, and I think that's sometimes what it's all about when you get these bumps in the road. So it doesn't mean that we like them when it's postponed, but it is, sometimes, like Ellen said, it's just necessary. And ideally, it is just a postponement. It's not that it's changing. So, that it's not that those things aren't going to be implemented. It's just a delay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's see. We've got a couple other questions. How does what happens at home affect the kids' willingness to try foods at school?
Well, absolutely. What happens at home is either going to support or possibly create challenges for the schools. Home life, there can be all kinds of different gamuts of the spectrum in terms of what kids are eating. What we do know is that if the school provides the opportunities to taste, to if they're providing opportunities where the kids are involved in the process, not so much the cooking process, that's one way of being involved, but whether it be in, selecting the meals, naming a food item, having menu suggestions, and the more they can involve kids and the more kids can try healthy food, we do know that it also trickles down into what happens at home. So it can almost have a reverse effect. So there can be negative things happening in the home that turn positive, and then there can be also positive things that are happening in the home that are taken into the school and become more positives there. So I think it can be a really good relationship, and it's about education. Sometimes people just don't know. Kids don't have exposure to things. But once they've had a chance and realize that, what a pair is, then that provides another opportunity for families to provide pairs, not realizing that their child liked it in the first place. Kids take those opinions home with them, and they're able to be excited over what they are eating in the healthy food options at school.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. It's, if a parent shows excitement at home about, and a positive view of healthy changes versus a negative view, that really can make all the difference. And, at least over time it can make a difference. It's just a matter of that going kind of back to reinforcing the message in every arena that you're in. So. Okay, here's another one. So our school lunch program is offering some very healthy items now, but they sit side by side with many unhealthy things. Why are those unhealthy things still in the lunch line?
Well, time. The new snack rule has just come in place, and is it starting this summer or this coming school year, Carol? Or can you just refresh my timeline on that one, the new snack ruling?
The new snack is the smart snacks are starting next school year.
Yeah,
but I think I think they're talking about even in the lunch line, line. And
gotcha.
I can say a couple things related to that. I think this just goes back to, as well, there are, even if a school is meeting all of the requirements, there's a big variety in the perceived nutrition of the different things that can meet the requirements. And ideally, your school is one that is really looking to go above and beyond those requirements, or they're meeting the requirements in a minimal way due to all the challenges that they face. And so one school might have scratch cooking, another school might still be using a lot of processed foods, and they're both meeting the requirements, but one is less processed and maybe more nutritious than the other. And so how do you get those things out of the lunch line? And I think this still comes back to, what are your particular food service staff's participation rates? What are their budgetary constraints? How much information or training do they have on what's available, on what's possible? And the healthier items often cost more. They often take more time to gain popularity. So sometimes nutrition services is reluctant to remove those things that have been very popular. And taking a look at some of the tools and resources that we've talked about in this presentation, the School Day Just Got Healthier Toolkit put out by USDA has information for nutrition services staff as well as for parents. And that's an excellent resource you could share with your cafeteria managers and your school district level personnel. I think it's got some ideas on how to promote those healthier items, because once the healthier items are chosen more, then the unhealthier items are less likely to be put on the menu as frequently. So it's about building not just participation in the meals, but building the popularity of the healthier items on the menu through like those smarter lunchroom initiatives and that type of thing.
And I'm
Ellen,
going to jump in here too.
Else?
If you think about it, one of the things that it's also about perception, and sometimes we think because it might look a certain way, or you think it might be loaded with cheese or something else, you might not realize it has reduced fat cheese, or that it has beans in the burrito also, or that there are other items with it that maybe it's pizza, but maybe it's a whole wheat pizza and you just don't know it. So, I think that hearing that they've got really healthy foods is a really great strategy. So maybe that's your in, is you compliment on the healthy foods, and then the question, what else is going on, and what is this item, and how does that meet the goals and what you're trying to achieve in terms of meal options and meeting meal patterns. So you might be surprised that maybe it clearly does. So, it's becoming a little bit more familiar and educated with the program is helpful too.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions, and then we'll need to wrap up. First one, do you know of any schools that actually recognize school food staff as part of the educational team?
Yes. Well, food staff is often on school wellness teams. School wellness teams, as we talked about earlier, are required by schools to have in place, and often members of the school wellness team can be part of a school improvement team, which is also often in place in schools. So they usually are, and encouraging them to be a part of a group if they're not already is important. I think it's important to value them because they're a valuable resource in the school. They're feeding the kids. They see the kids on a daily basis. They're an integral part of the education process. So usually they are involved, and if they're not, finding ways to encourage them to be part of those teams is important.
Okay, great. Well, we have about a minute left, and we wanted to go over just a couple of other additional resources. I'm not really going to talk about each of these individually, but you can see there are lots of general resources that provide lots of information about the school meal program. And in the webinar follow-up information, we will send a link to a document that has all of these links in it. We will also share a link to the YouTube video that I mentioned on our Share Healthy Foods page. And look for all of that information again probably next Tuesday after the holiday. And to end, in closing, we would just like to encourage anyone who'd like to learn more about our organization and how you can get involved with our mission. We'd encourage you to take our Every Kid Healthy pledge on our website and help us create a 100,000-person movement to make all schools healthier places. The pledge just takes about 10 seconds, and once you've signed on, we will send you information and show you ways big and small that you can really turn your commitment into action. And with that, thanks very much, Ellen, and thanks participants for all of your time today and all of your efforts to improve and make your schools healthier places. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.